Hello, welcome to the Flavor Lab. So if my calculations are correct, this video should be coming out sometime in spooky season. And for that reason, I want to make a spooky snack. Essentially, I want to make one of the real classic Halloween snacks, a popcorn ball. But instead of using popcorn, I'm going to use flaming hot Cheetos. And the reason I want to do that is because the product you end up with really looks like raw meat or zombie brains. And I think it's a pretty cool looking snack. And I'm actually going to show you two different ways to do this. One's an easier method that uses marshmallows, so you end up with something that kind of is like a Rice Krispie treat, but with flaming hot Cheetos. And the second method I think looks a little better, but it involves a little bit more of a difficult process by making a sugar syrup. But in reality, it was still pretty easy. All right, with that being said, let's get into it.
Okay, so let's go ahead and make our zombie brains. Now, regardless of which method you choose, we're gonna need some flaming hot Cheetos. Now, I know these can be quite difficult to find outside of the US, so if you just want to use regular Cheetos, I think this would also still work. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the method I think that looks a little better, but is also a little bit more difficult to do. But honestly, it's really not that difficult. So what we need to do is measure out 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and then we're also going to need 1/4 cup of light corn syrup. And to that, we're gonna add about a spoon's worth of water, although, you don't really need to fret about that too much. Just go ahead and give everything a stir to make sure that everything is kind of wet, and then we're gonna place this whole thing on a burner. Now, essentially what we're doing here is we're gonna make a candy. So we just need to heat this up until it reaches about 235 degrees Fahrenheit, which is corresponding to the soft ball stage of candy making. And essentially, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're making a candy. Honestly, this is the recipe for how you make popcorn balls, but instead of using popcorn, we're flaming hot Cheetos. So once we do reach 235 degrees Fahrenheit, we can take it off. However, I wasn't really paying attention and just kind of overshot that. So let me show you this little trick if the same thing happens to you. So just go ahead and take it off the burner and then just add a little bit of water back in. It should basically bring the temperature back down as long as it hasn't started to turn golden or anything like that. So then once it reaches 235 degrees Fahrenheit again, we're just gonna go ahead and add in some food coloring. So I'm gonna add in a few drops of red food coloring, and then to give it that more like bloody look, it's good to add a few drops of blue food coloring in as well. And that's gonna give it that deeper hue that kind of makes it look a little gory. And then we're gonna also add in about a tablespoon of butter. And then we're just gonna mix that up and then put half of the Cheetos in a bowl and then just go ahead and pour in some of that syrup. And what we're gonna do is using some sort of spoon, just go ahead and give that a mix and just try to coat all of the flaming hot Cheetos with the sugary syrup as you can. And we're just gonna keep doing this until basically everything is coated in that kind of gory looking sugar syrup. And once everything's all nice and coated, we can go ahead and take these out and form them into kind of brain looking patties with our hands. Now, I think it's probably wise to use gloves as I'm doing here, just because you don't really want food coloring all over your hands and, maybe you'll get stopped by the police. But otherwise, I do think, you can do this barehanded. And additionally, if we want to kind of make this look a little bit more gory, we could add things like cayenne pepper on top to kind of give it a more spicy kick. And then I also had this kind of cool idea to add a little bit of sesame seeds because they kind of look like bugs. I don't know, I'm not really sold on that, but feel free to experiment with this. I think that they'll make a really cool Halloween snack. So if you find something that looks good, leave a comment down below and let me know how, yours turned out. Now, the second method I think is really only a little bit easier just because you don't really need a thermometer for this one. Otherwise, we're kind of gonna follow the same process, but instead of using sugar and heating it up, we're gonna just basically melt some marshmallows. So to do this, we're gonna create a double boiler. So basically just take a pot, fill it with a few inches worth of water, and then place a metal bowl or glass bowl on top of it. And then we're gonna need some marshmallows. So I'm just using these jet puffed marshmallows. I'm using the bigger ones. It might be preferable to actually use the smaller ones if you have access to those, but this is what I had, so I just went ahead and went with it. So then basically just toss in about 10, 12 marshmallows and just start heating the water. And eventually what will start to happen is that these marshmallows are going to melt. Now, as we saw in the meat mallow video, essentially all marshmallows really are is that sugar syrup from the previous method, and then just kind of whipped until they turn into that foam. Additionally, they have some gelatin in there, and that basically helps it keep its shape while it's at room temperature. I went ahead and also added a tablespoon of butter in here, and it doesn't hurt to break the marshmallows up if you can, if you're going with the bigger ones. If you have the smaller marshmallows, they should melt quite easily. And essentially just keep doing this until we get this nice marshmallowy puddle that looks like this. Once everything's all nice and melted, pretty much done. And I mean, this is really the method you would do in order to be able to make Rice Krispie treats. Now, the thing that we have to do here though is we have to go ahead and add in that food coloring. So just like beforehand, we're just gonna add a few drops of red in, and then also a few drops of blue. I added a little bit too much blue, so I just added a little bit more red. But even then, the color didn't quite get there. Now, it's hard for me to tell if that's just because of the like whiteness of the marshmallow that's kind of making everything a little bit pinky, or if it's actually just because I got the ratio of food coloring wrong. In either case, it still turned out somewhat okay. I wasn't as happy with the color, but it might have just been my fault, so maybe we should make this again and see if I can do a better job the second time. Once everything's all nice and mixed, we're just gonna basically repeat the same process from before. Just take the bowl of Cheetos, pour in our marshmallow goop, and then really just give this a nice mix. Now, the one thing about this is that this goop kind of cooled a little bit quicker than the sugar syrup, so you might wanna just make sure that you really give it a good mix quickly. Again, we're going to just kind of form these into little zombie brain patties with our hands, and also let them cool. So after about 2 hours, I came back to them. Honestly, I don't even think it takes that long. I was doing other stuff. And yeah, they were both kind of done and cool. Now, just comparing the two of these when looking at them, the one made with sugar syrup is a little bit more firm and held together, and it's also a lot less sticky. The other one is more like a Rice Krispie treat, where you can kind of pull each individual Cheeto out from the bunch if you want to. It's not as easy to do that with the sugar syrup one. Now, I'm not gonna say which method is better, but I am gonna do a taste test. So let's go ahead and do that.
All right, so I have the two snacks here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a taste test, as this is kind of a food crime. If not, it might actually look like a real crime. I do have to say that if you don't, the blood spatters all over the plate do kind of look really cool, and I kind of recommend this. Now, I have to say, they really look to die for. I'm gonna try to keep those puns to a minimum. So I'm gonna give a taste test to both of these and see which one tastes better, or if they're the same, or what do they even taste like. So, oh, this is pretty good. Yeah, I really recommend that. Something about the spiciness with the sweetness, it really works. Okay, I definitely recommend the sugar syrup one. Now, I anticipate this one's also gonna taste good. I don't think this one's gonna be like extremely worse, but let me just give this one a shot as well. That one's also very good. Now, there is a subtle difference in the taste. The nice thing about the sugar one is that we really have total control over what we put into it. We really just put sugar in there. There wasn't any other flavoring agents in there. Now, we could have added other flavors in there if we wanted to, but I didn't add any myself. In the marshmallows though, however, they do add some flavoring. So I think, for example, there might be vanilla in there. It tastes a little bit, it's kind of hard to describe other than it tastes a little more marshmallowy. Again, if you're familiar with Rice Krispie treats, you might know what I mean by this. Yeah, definitely recommend making these. And yeah, that's it for this week. If you have any more spooky season ideas, let me know. And maybe I can make it before the end of the month is up. I'll see you guys again soon.